Welcome, everyone. I am really excited for today's conversation. I am joined by Doug Rosano, VP of Sales of Ops to AI. Ops to AI builds what they call company GPTs, basically AI vaults that turn a company's scattered knowledge into something teams can actually use quickly and in a controlled way. What caught my attention is Doug's focus on the real operation pain, not AI for AI's sake, but using AI to shorten cycle time, reduce handoff confusion, and help teams execute without rework. Doug, to set the table, I'd love to start right where you and I were last talking with the messy reality of sales notes, living in tense spaces, and then implementation, inheriting uncertainty. Can you walk us into that world a little bit?
Yeah, AI has been a pretty amazing disruptor in a bunch of ways. If we look at the sales tech stack as an example, most firms start off with a BDR and SDR doing outbound, and that turned into Gong, and that turned into notes and training. Now Zoom and every video type of connection has a recording agent, right? And you have Salesforce and you have email and you have lots of siloed data. When I first put my hands on AI back in 23 in December after ChatGPT came out, it was December 6th to be exact. And I just kind of approached it like a box. It was like the internet back, you know, here's this empty box, just ask whatever you want. I just went, oh boy, here comes this evolution of what I thought the internet could provide me actually gives me answers now. Right. So I just thought, how many use cases can this happen for? At the time, I was looking to bring on board a CTO, an AI CTO, to help my clients, which are private equity and venture capital firms, and having a search firm. My thinking was if I could supplant this type of person inside one of these big private equity companies, then I could learn a lot about AI along the way. And Jeff Mitchell was that guy that I found in Indianapolis, and he was building conversational AI agents in January of 2023. These
Wow.
agents were really, really good. I was like, okay, well, what are you building them for? He said, interviews. I said, are you a recruiter? And he goes, oh no. He goes, I'm just a CTO, CIO, and I'm doing it for the medical industry for autism clinics because they have a lot of turnover with these very young people they hire called registered behavioral consultants. The net is, as I met Jeff, we started talking, and we've been doing it for 2 years now. And we've gone through the customer success journey back in 23. We saw a lot of companies trying to convert net new logo sales firms into let's transition into the customer base and figure out if customer success is going to upsell, cross sell our clients. So we went down that path and built a number of AI chatbots to do outreach. Hi, my name is Tracy. Is this Bob Smith? Hi, Bob. Talking to you about a new set of solutions we created. We went down that journey for over a year. And back then at the time, and really early 24, there was no executive on the planet that was going to sign up for that. They just didn't know what it was, how they were going to do it. It's like, I got to make quota. And, the VPs of customer success didn't have any money. And the CRO is just like, hey, dude, I got to make my quarterly number. So we went down that path and scratched our heads and started thinking about the multitude of application use cases, which is frankly the problem. When you start talking about its capability, executives just wander off into this, holy cow, I could use it for this and I could use it for that. What ends up happening is they do nothing because they don't have the time, they don't know what it is, and there's still a lot of that happening. AI, I think, forces people to be far more accountable because it's a workflow oriented solution than just buying a product that they can unsubscribe and say, yeah, the vendor didn't support me very well and that kind of stuff. It's been a crazy journey. The speed of the innovation is nuts. And I'm looking forward to sharing one of the things on today's podcast.
Sounds good. You talk about accountability. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? What do you mean by, the accountability and not just being able to quote unquote click unsubscribe?
Yeah. So AI represents this notion of workflow agents. So these agents are going to be doing tasks. And if I'm a leader, I have to sign up for how that's going to affect my line of business as a manager, however the AI is embedded into the business workflow. If I'm a manager in finance or a manager in legal and a manager in RevOps or a manager in sales or in the back office and support, I have to figure out how AI is going to embed into my business. A lot of managers have never had to manage that level of accountability for how the systems are actually going to operate. They buy products and the products have features and functions, and you implement those things and they're great. But when you start getting into AI, operational AI, not productivity tools that you and I use every day to
Hmm.
like ChatGPT, we're talking about having agents go collect access and create decisions and judgments around multiple data sources. Here we are today in the world where AI is very good at doing that multiple heavy context interaction and output.
Hmm.
But most managers have never had to think about buying, leveraging, and owning the technology that's really at the heart of the workflow because IT used to do that. Now the emphasis is on the business leader by department, right? They have never really had to get down into the bowels of how is AI going to make my myopic business work and being accountable for the expense in the management of AI in my domain in an operational basis. IT gave them the solution, a fixed product in which they interacted with and ran reports from, but they never had to have the input of what I want these workers to do for me in my business. That accountability is fearful for so many because they've never done it before. They've never bought it before, let alone how do I actually set up the operational management?
Okay, cool.
It's a big leap. It's a big leap
It
from
is a big
so,
leap.
so many.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I can kind of relate, especially when you think about what it entails and the amount of potential stress and just that accountability. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human, right? We all have shortcomings, we all have fears, we all have concerns. So whether or not we always want that to judge our decision making, it does.
And I think one of the things that we've gone through most recently in 2025 is people think executives were forced to just say, I'm adopting it and I'm learning about it. Companies like our firm, we did a lot of proofs of concepts that ended up in a no decision. And quite frankly, they were educational exercises for teams and leadership with zero intention of actually going into production. They spent 30 grand to say, let's give it a try and see where this goes. Number one. Number two, there's still a lot of companies that are evaluating tools, which isn't really operational AI, where the AI is actually requesting data from multiple sources, aggregating it and inferencing it and getting that kind of response. It's more like productivity tool POCs that have happened a lot in 2025. I think there's different levels of maturity from these leaders to say, okay, the tools are great and we're going to live in an AI tools world, but now we're talking about agentic or AGI, or I just simply call it operational AI, where I'm really doing things where there are conditions and there's tasks that these agents are actually prescribed to do that you're going to own as a manager. And that makes it very, very different. So I think we're now just starting to head into this. Okay, I better figure out how I'm going to sign up to be that type of manager as an operational manager of AI. That forces them to actually get into the nitty gritty of application workflow. What happens when a failure happens with an agent? How do I build and structure my risk management around AI for what I do? And that leads us, obviously, dependent upon the types of applications that these leaders are going to ideate and then bring in house and try and decide whether they're going to go in production.
Okay. You're giving me a lot to think about. I like it.
Crazy time.
Yeah, seriously. When we spoke previously, one of the things that we talked about was the sales to implementation handoff. What's the most common way it breaks? What's getting lost? Is it the context, the promise, the scope, the priorities? You want to elaborate on that?
Well, if we take this as a universal problem, and it's been universal since a technology was created, I have a sales rep who has quota. They might not be the most technical. Then I have pre-sales engineers that are somewhat product focused. Then we have solution consultants or solution architects that are trying to see how does this thing map into what the customer's trying to do. When you take those three types of inputs and everybody's writing their own notes or
Mm-hmm.
details in the entire beginning to the end of the sales cycle, the data, how it's interpreted, how it's stored, where it's at is now very complex. Back before sales stack lived, People just wrote notes. Now we
Yes.
have all these places where this data lives. Like I mentioned earlier, Gong, Salesforce, Chorus, Otter, Fathom, note takers. Then we have levels of maturity. So in Salesforces where you have junior sales folks, they're going to hear things, well, that I used to call when I manage salespeople, happy years. They have happy years. This sounds like a really good opportunity. And right. And then you have
Okay.
the sales consultant say, oh, no, they're not ready. They don't have the infrastructure. How are they going to support it? Right. So what AI is really good at, if you think about how you interface with any of the solutions that you use today, like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grok, or
Hmm.
Gemini, everything comes back and forth with you from text. So they're really, really good at context review and inference of multiple different conversations, meetings, notes, recordings, actually capturing sentiment, right? One of the ways that we have been talking to our clients, these are technology vendors that have complex solutions where they have a mix and match of sales leadership and experience in the field, and they get this deal that gets closed. And it's like, okay, well, I'm looking at all this hodgepodge of data in the notes, and I'm trying to correlate what the customer actually bought and what do we have
Yeah.
to deliver to them, right? So we've been talking about that and created a solution for that so that it removes all of the internal personal bias of what my notes actually say. And it aggregates, correlates, and creates an environment where everybody can actually walk through this decision making process of what did you sell? What do we implement? And it reduces that amount of time and friction of back and forth, listening, reading the notes, listening to the calls, and all of those things that have to happen between sales and the folks that deliver it. In many cases, the customer success and the implementation or pro services teams aren't in the pre sales call. They're not in
Hmm.
that cycle. AI becomes a really great solution for that from either the initial deployment and or on the back end of aggregating content for support. We were working with a previous client on a support ticket system where simple things like, how do I communicate that the fix was completed for the customer? Can I do that through AI and outbound through AI as a voice agent, leave them a voice message on their phone? You can, right? Or if I go from level 1 to level 3 on severity, where's all the documentation and understanding of what's really happening here? So when you think about how AI can be leveraged not only in a sales motion and a delivery motion, but also AI is really good at aggregating this kind of conversational note taking, inferencing of who said what, where, and why. How can I shrink that triage, if you want to call it, so that the customer experience is on key, it's better, it's faster, it's better organized, et cetera. And that's one of the things that we see how AI can assist all types of vendors, whether they're service providers or tech vendor or any vendor for that.
I like that word triage. You have AI and it's helping with the triage of everything. What kind of timelines are you looking at between, beforehand when you were having to go through it manually to AI doing it? Like, what does that timeline look like now?
We have a pilot underway now where it takes 2 weeks for the implementation and the customer success team to take everything from the first gong call, the first sales call, all the way to a form that's created by the field along this journey, this note taking kind of summarization to go back and to talk to the customer. They had to go through the notes. They had to put their eyeballs on every message and listen to every call. This company is very successful. So they do somewhere between 30 and 50 of these a quarter. When you think about the time that the deal closes, everybody pats the sales rep on the back. The customer success team has to then launch into that engagement with their new customer. It can be very lengthy. In this case, it's a 2 week lag, and they have a team of well over 50 people that,
Dang.
that do this. There's 4 specifically that have to do this because they're the most knowledgeable and can read through the lines and do all that. So they're looking for this type of automation to help them shrink their time to engagement, but also filter the absolute right delivery plan that's 100% focused on what the customer wanted to buy and needs to buy.
Okay. So we're talking 2 weeks. What is it looking
2
like
weeks to a
now
couple
with the
hours.
utilizes? So it's a couple hours now with the utilization of AI.
Yeah, it can be almost instantaneous. We ask them, how fast do you want to have the result? And do you need it within an hour or do you want it within 48 hours? And they're like, well, from 2 weeks, 48 hours is fine.
Yeah, especially when you think about, I mean, let's be honest. I know there's some people that absolutely love reading. My sister's one of them. I am not. I don't love reading. Typically, if I open a book and I start reading, it's like,
I
right.
have
But
books talk to me, right? I
well,
don't
I
like
mean,
reading it.
that's great. Like, there's people out there that just love reading. I don't know why it's never worked for me. Maybe my brain is just too active. Maybe my body's too active, and I just can't sit down for that long without doing something, and it just drives me crazy. But even so, the amount of mental energy and emotional energy that's going into reviewing all of those documents, reviewing all those phone calls, reviewing all of it, like, that is a lot of stress on a human. Whether they like it or not, it still is causing that burden. It still is causing that stress. Now, for you, it might not be as a heavy burden as it would be for me just because of my dislike of reading in general. But, at the same time, there still is that kind of that burden, right? So the fact that not only can you minimize the process from 2 weeks to 48 hours, on top of that, you're also minimizing how much of that burden, that stress is ending up on your employees. That's massive. That's got to be such a big win.
And think about it, the people that are making the decisions of what is true, what a customer says that they want to solve as a business problem might not map specifically to feature function, right? And
Yep.
that's one of the things that, you know, the whole software technology industry was built around. I have a feature that I think solves this business problem, and does it or does it not? And how am I going to implement it in the time frame and the infrastructure and all that kind of stuff? So it's kind of like the folks that are really being put to the task are the surgeons that are saying, what's the diagnosis?
Mm-hmm.
What cure do I have to create? And then how do I pass the cure off to be deployed and managed and remedied? Right. So those folks probably really did never sign up for that. They just said, we're going to sell 2 weeks of services and, you know, we're going to install it. Well, in today's world, it's a lot more complex than that. It's a very innovative application. And the leadership that is on this project were very well versed in what AI can and can't do. To give you an example of that, one of the first questions they asked us was, can you guys please manage the data for us? And what that means is how do we manage all of the data that is compiled and aggregated and correlated from all of these different data sources in an automated way where they don't have to, right? So
Mm-hmm.
once they said that to us, we were like, oh, they get how complex this is, right? Because it is. It's operationally complex. Um, it's not like just upload notes, read it, and get an output. Especially when you're using 4 to 5 separate data sources.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Um, yeah, which kind of leads to my next question. As we've talked about AI, specifically, the risk of AI without an operating engine, things like governance, QA, release controls, and cost caps. How do you build that discipline so AI doesn't turn into chaos?
It's a great question. Over the last 7 months, we had a lot of POCs, not a lot. We had very focused, very smart, intelligent POCs underway, 4 or 5 of them that never closed. And
Sorry, really quick. When you say POCs, for those that don't know what that is, would you just elaborate?
it's a trial, it's a proof of concept. So they take their ideation of what a solution should look like and we build it for them and then we test it. That never closed or they never graduated into a production status in the company. We realized that there wasn't an adoption runway. There wasn't a way to go from trying an idea, getting some agents to work and get the reports back, to
Okay.
actually the deployment of it. We ended up doing some market research and talking to a lot of folks. There is this methodology called the software development lifecycle, a very stage gated process of approvals, compliance, and
Yeah.
scalability and
Yep.
supportability. And so we went down that path of kind of exploring, is there this thing called an AI factory or an AI lab where you would start from an idea and it would go through these gated stages of compliance through the build phase, the POC, and then really getting into the validation of user adoption, compliance, execution of the agents, the reporting to really test the true value. So one of the things is another solution that we're building now is called the AI lab. If you think
Okay.
about AI, and if you haven't thought about it, it's going to continue to change and morph. And the agents that we build today are comparative to third grader. By next year, they'll be a middle
Oh,
schooler.
okay.
And then by the end of 27, there'll be college level capability. That re-engineering and that knowledge should be stored, reusable, in a way that a company can look at building what I'm going to call their AI repository of assets. We
Mm-hmm.
built what, we tried what failed, what models, what cost. I use this analogy that people are trying to build an airplane today with AI as a product, as an airplane, but they have no idea how to build a runway. They don't have a hangar. They don't have parts or mechanics.
Okay.
And you have to deliver a flight plan before you leave an airport today. We really thought hard about this and talked to a lot of consultant firms like the big four and said, every company is going to need to have this kind of AI laboratory because AI is going to be around for the next 10, 15 years. It might change into a different name, but people are going to continue to adopt and evolve. And you have to store that kind of experience and education and learnings in a repository. But you also have to have this cohesion and structure, governance and compliance, which eventually kicks out the bad POCs that are failing today. 46% fail at the end of a POC, and only there's 13% that graduate today. So if we can shrink and put the kill switches on that 46% early, the company
Mm-hmm.
saves money. And then if we have this longer kind of laboratory user adoption, portability staging, then the odds of a POC going into production increases. For time, the idea is your cost of AI gets a lot less because the learnings and the experience are there, kill projects quicker, and the cost of deploying it will be less. So that's one of the other solutions that we're bringing to market. It's called the AI lab.
I guess kind of a devil's advocate type question, right? So I was talking to someone the other day and they were saying, especially with AI, you got garbage in, garbage out. What are you guys doing to make sure that, because I mean, as you talk about this AI and it being a third grader and then a 12th grader and then a college person, how are you making sure that that college graduate actually has a lot of good solid knowledge and not a bunch of garbage information that it's built its knowledge base on?
The whole garbage in, garbage out data quality comes back to bite everybody, right? And AI is no different.
For sure.
There's two schools of thought. They're architectural decisions, essentially.
Okay.
Most solutions are client server today. So they have a database, they have a single data store for an application. ServiceNow has it, Workday has theirs, Salesforce has theirs, Oracle has theirs, et cetera, et cetera. MongoDB has theirs. And any big enterprise could have anywhere between 5 and 7 big, large data stores, petabytes of data, let alone all the applications that need and pull and push for that data. So either you're going to have to ensure that the data is cleansed prior to building the agents to ask for it, ask to interface and to um, prompt
Mm-hmm.
into that data. So either you're going to have to clean the data before the project, or our approach is really simple because we have a POC and say, let's just put it all in a clean, pristine warehouse. So we'll take that data, we'll clean it on the way in on the ingest cycle, and then put it in the right index, categorized for what it is, HR, finance, legal, et cetera, whatever we need. Then you're building the agents from a clean set of data. So you're minimizing in the build stage and through the validation stage the hallucination problem. By the
Okay.
time that you get through the validation stage, which is really a go live type of model,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to call it a staging gate, that data is either synthetic data and or it's real data, not transactional data, not touching the transaction systems, but it's an architectural decision whether you want to use kind of like the connectors that they have today called
Mm-hmm.
MCPs, which is an agent to agent query. So the data source has an MCP and we call it and say, hey, go grab this data for me. So it's a real quandary, but architecturally, it's just easier in these early stages of adoption to just go bring it to us. We'll clean the data and start from a clean bill of data in a warehouse so that the agents can learn. Because today, if the business users are writing prompts, which they are, they
Hmm.
don't know if the data is bad or not.
They're trusting, they're assuming that it is because they're trying to do a job.
That's right. Salesforce has done a pretty good job with Agentforce, but really for most of 2025, people didn't adopt it because there's 10 Bill Smiths from ADP in Chicago in the CRM.
Hmm.
Right. So who's going to go back and clean up petabytes, terabytes of data in one source called Salesforce versus all the other sources that the agents will need?
Oh, yeah, for
We
sure.
kind of take, yeah, it's a decision that you have to take architecturally, and we're going to live in both until the world is perfectly integrated and perfectly filtered. It took us 20 years to get APIs to work intelligently.
Yep.
And then we had data movement, data management, we had extract, transform, load, and all those kinds of things. Well, those things are kind of out of the picture now. You might want to use extract, transfer, and load, but at the end of the day, when you're building, you should probably build from clean. It just makes it faster and easier.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And thanks for answering that question. I know I kind of put you on the spot there a little bit. Earlier, we were talking about specifically with the process of going from meeting with the customer for the very first time to, okay, we've signed a contract, let's build a product, and how that's going from about 2 weeks to 48 hours. Do you have any other examples of stuff that you've kind of been working on where you've gone from long periods of time to half that or, you know, tenth of
Yeah.
it?
When we first started thinking about use cases in industries, private equity and M&A industries,
Mm-hmm.
when they decide that they want to explore a company for an acquisition, they sign what's called an LOI. It's like a letter of intent. At that point, the company needs to give the PE firm or the M&A firm access to 98% of all the data that they have. We felt that would be a really good use case because essentially it's just mostly data and some spreadsheets, but they're forms like PDFs or Word documents. And there are solutions out in the market that have been created for M&A, and they're called data rooms. There's big companies like DataSite and Data Room is the name of it, of a vendor. And those are client server solutions where they set up an environment where you upload the data into those things, and then you use client server calls to get the data back and forth. We felt that AI would be really good for that type of speed and efficiency,
Okay.
where we could actually import 600 to 700 files in a few hours. The beauty about AI is we built agents to actually look at the file itself,
Okay.
determine what type of data was in the file, HR data,
Okay.
contract
Yeah.
data, spreadsheet data, engineering data, sales data. It's intelligent to know to go apply those files into the right indexes where the data is stored by department.
Mm-hmm.
That worked great and it still works great, which led us to the automation of our original premise as a business, which is having the company GPT, essentially saying, I have all of this corporate data and it's in all of these different pockets and business units. So maybe I should set up my own corporate GPT so my employees can have access to all data security and identity granted to
Mm-hmm.
go look at finance data, look at HR data, sales data, RevOps data, engineering data inside of my own company. So I'm actually protecting what we call data sovereignty. That's why we called our solutions vaults, like the
Mm-hmm.
corporate AI
Yeah.
vault. We believe that companies are going to have eventually their own corporate GPT that does just that. Another use case that we have been working with revolves around sales and marketing in that context. The problem with the sales stack is if I want to assess whether this is a good deal or not, I have to get all of this data, or I have
Mm-hmm.
to go back to a prospect. I have the 15th salesperson who's new in the territory, who's got to go find this account, go back through their history and determine what happened. Why did we not win? Did they blow us off? Did the champion leave? Did the functionality not work? As we all know, sales people typically don't put that much detail into win or loss. They just say, yeah, we got lost by a competitor or price were too expensive. The reality is AI represents an incredible opportunity to build what I'm going to call the sales AI engine, where we take the corporate GPT by business unit. So you take engineering, pre-sales, sales, DevOps, marketing, and take all of that data by product line, and Salesforce. To basically have a rep just say, hey, I have a meeting with a healthcare company next week. Can I win? Do we win? Do we have customers, references, use cases for healthcare? That's the biggest problem that we see in onboarding today, taking non-domain sales reps and give them the context of what you're selling with referenceability. AI would be a perfect engine to aggregate all of that data and create the perfect sales engine, as in, yes, we win in healthcare. Can
Hmm.
you create me a talk track? It can create the talk track. It can reference key points and wins. Post to that discovery call, I feed the discovery call into the engine and say, build me the probability of a win, kind of like a
Okay. Yeah.
probability solution, and create the talk track for how the business problem and the use case that the customer wants maps to our solution. That capability is available today if you
That's awesome.
if you wanted to have that capability in every tech firm or non. That's where the corporate GPT, our vision of the corporate GPT, came to life.
I like it. I kind of want one now too. Another question. I don't have a company GPT, but I've basically kind of ended up building my own kind of personal profile on ChatGPT. That's the main agent that I'm using for most of my stuff. I feel like it has a pretty clear idea of like who I am, the way I think, the way I process stuff, the questions that I've asked. For someone that's been working so hard on using, ChatGPT like I have, what would you say is the advantage of going to a company GPT? Is it just because of the fact that I have all that sovereign data? So now I'm not necessarily having to compete and I can still build this profile so it can learn me and learn my voice, my thought process?
Well, if I could sell as well as the founder and the VP of engineering and articulate why we built the technology to do what it does and why it will meet the need of you, Mr. Prospect, business problem, and
Mm-hmm.
why I have instant knowledge of that that intellectual property and data sovereignty and knowledge is siloed today. And it's not accessible today unless I say, hey, I've got this prospect and I'm not sure, and the SEs aren't sure, but for some reason I have this inkling that we could help this customer with our solution, and I just don't know how,
Okay.
right? And that happens probably every day for the junior people that we're hiring today because of
Mm-hmm.
cost and et cetera, et cetera. And there's no typical way to access or aggregate all of that data today instantaneously, right?
Yeah.
And to actually give the VP of sales any level of predictability of of how the it's in the forecast and what's our probability of winning, right? So if I go through my med pick or medic or challenger or sales process,
Mm-hmm.
if I had this type of environment, the sales execution environment, the predictability of winning or bailing on a deal instead of staying in it for 6 months to realize you're going to never win it,
Okay. Yeah.
right? Goes away, right? So by taking complex solutions and applying all of that tribal knowledge, the nucleus of tribal knowledge that you would have access to, which you don't today. You can go out and do research on the customer and read a 10K,
Yeah.
tell me what their initiatives are, great. But when buyers come to companies, they've already done their homework on the company and they're there not to say, tell me about XYZ software company. They're there to validate what they've ascertained previously. Some will say buyers are 60% of the journey, and you're one of the three that they're finally looking at. For junior sales reps specifically, they don't have the context and the chops to have that dialogue. The buyers just don't have any time for a sales rep to say, so tell me about your business at JP Morgan. Okay. Right. They're there to validate that the solution that they think will work for them works. And this is the fastest path way to be able to get every sales rep, every SE, every employee in the company smarter, faster, and more intelligent about what the company is, what it does, what it can and can't do. And that is the beauty of AI because it's all documented somewhere. or it can be uploaded in voice notes or in a document. So that's where we believe that the value of the corporate GPT is just pure execution, learning, onboarding, and customer engagement, and making that experience and cut and bait. If you're not going to win, get out of it.
No, there's no reason to stick around. It's a lot better to cut your losses early than instead of investing tons and tons of money and having to cut your losses later on, especially if you
Well,
can kind of predict that a little bit, with some sense of authority.
and look, let's face it, people aren't overflowing with pipeline opportunities. So sales reps are going to hang on to deals longer in the hope that they buy.
Okay. Yep.
And it's a problem, right? I mean, what's the truth in the pipeline? And this is a way to actually cut to the chase and the truth by putting indicators and metrics around deal probability, right?
I like it. Sounds like a
So this
great solution.
it it's available. We could knock it out in no time because the data exists.
Yeah, it's there. That's cool. To kind of wrap things up a little bit. So for those that are listening, if I have an MSP owner that's wanting to listen and he or she's trying to resolve various issues, specifically like a handing off problem, what are the first two things that you would tell people even before buying anything?
Build a business case. Number one, really dissect the business case in the context right now of simplistic wins. Like, where are the things that are the bottlenecks where AI can help you? Because what we see is everybody tries to boil the ocean. Yeah,
Okay.
like, oh, I could use it over here or use it over there. And the reality is, yeah, you can, but you have to crawl, walk, run, sprint, and it takes time and it takes trust of the system. Few have implemented anything like this, right? That's really, how do I buy it? How do I implement it? How do I support it? I would say start small, pick a real good use case that affects optimization, efficiency, right? Where you're going to get ROI out of it and build from there. The other thing is, don't be enamored with pre-built AI tools. If you think about tools, a vendor can only provide so much flexibility of their tool for the users that if it's so flexible, they're not going to be able to support it.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's this question, is there build versus buy? If you
Okay.
find the
Yep.
perfect buy
Yep.
product that does everything you need, great. We are a proponent of, yeah, go do that. But if you also need a purpose built thing for you, it does one thing and it does one thing better than anything that you need,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the value of purpose built AI comes in. So determining whether it's a tool that you buy or it's a purpose built thing that's pretty complex that your people don't know how to support it or build it, then you're going to find partners like us and others out there that can help you do that. But start with the business case first and make it simple, small, and manageable. It's kind of like saying, I'm buying an RV, but I don't need a 40-footer. I'm going to start with a bumper pull trailer,
Mm-hmm.
a 14-footer, and get my feet wet to see if I like camping and not buy a 40-foot, Class A RV.
Okay.
Start small and be focused on purpose built.
I like it. One last question. All right. So I'm listening to the podcast and I'm just thinking, man, this sounds awesome. For those that, want to learn more or, they want to look into more of this corporate GPT, what is the best way to do that? How can they reach out? How can they find out more about what you've shared with us today and about some of your
Sure.
products?
Well, you can reach me directly at Doug at Ops2AI, which is OPS, the number two, AI.com. And find us online at ops2ai.com. And we're a small company, so our website doesn't reflect everything I spoke today because, as you can imagine, AI moves fast and these solutions move
So
fast.
fast.
So what you might have heard today might not be up on the website yet. But thanks a lot. It's been a blast being here.
Yeah, thank you. For those that are listening, I'll be sure to have information in the section below. Doug, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the time. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate, some of the behind the scenes details that you shared with us today. Thanks for tuning in today. Please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who'd benefit. My goal is simple: have real conversations with people doing meaningful work. If there's a potential guest I should talk to, send the note to the North Forge Intelligence LinkedIn page. I'll see you next time.